He thought he knew her every move, the sweet, gentle woman who never raised her voice, but something had changed. Sarah started sneaking out, lying and smiling for reasons David no longer understood, until one day he followed her. He watched as she hopped onto a man's motorcycle and vanished down a narrow street. What he discovered next wasn't betrayal. It was something far harder to accept. And it made him question, how many loves are destroyed by silence? The clock read 5:42 p.m. when David pulled his cap lower and hid behind the bakery's lamppost. The street in Maplewood Gardens was quiet, only the chirping of sparrows and a loud television escaping from a nearby house. He'd been waiting for Sarah for nearly half an hour. Then he saw her. She was glancing around, restless. She didn't notice her husband watching. A young guy on a black motorcycle pulled up to the curb. They exchanged a few words. Without a second thought, she swung onto the back, holding his waist with the familiarity of someone who'd done this many times before. The engine roared, and the bike rounded the corner as if fleeing the world. David stood there, frozen. He didn't know the guy's name, nor his wife's destination. But in that moment, something inside him began to shatter. And when he decided to follow them, he had no idea what he was about to uncover that night. David had always been a man of few words and many calluses. Son of a carpenter, grandson of a bricklayer, he learned early on that what's built with effort lasts longer than pretty words. When he met Sarah, she wore a worn-out supermarket uniform and the most serene gaze he'd ever seen. It didn't take long for him to fall in love. Not because of her beauty, but because of the calm she radiated, even while carrying the heavy burdens of life. They married simply, just a courthouse ceremony, a modest cake, and whispered promises before bed. But that was enough. Enough until the world began to squeeze. The auto shop where David worked saw fewer customers. Odd jobs became scarce. And the wedding party they dreamed of having one day, with a white dress, music, and her mother coming from out of state, seemed increasingly out of reach. Sarah offered to help. She said she could find something, cleaning, maybe. He refused instantly. "My wife doesn't need to demean herself for any party," he said, his voice hard, like someone who still confused pride with protection. After that, Sarah grew quieter. She started going out more often. Always with flimsy excuses. "I'm going to Lucy's house. I'm sorting out something for the dress. I need to get a quote." David became suspicious, first by instinct, then because the Sarah he knew didn't hide things. One night, she returned with wet hair and a smudge on her arm. She said she slipped on the sidewalk, but David noticed the smell of strong detergent, the same kind his mother used to scrub bathrooms. He tried to ignore it, tried to believe her. But something about Sarah was different, and deep down, what hurt most wasn't imagining betrayal. It was feeling that she no longer trusted him. It was a Friday, after an empty day at the shop, that he decided to follow his wife's movements. And that's when everything began to crumble. It was the kind of dream many would call silly, but for Sarah the wedding celebration represented everything she hadn't had: festivity, belonging. A day when life would pause just to focus on her. Since she was a little girl, she'd watched weddings from the windows of other people's homes. She remembered her mother saying that was for those with fathers present, or those who could afford to feed 100 mouths. And even as an adult, that childhood void still throbbed, like a wound that would only heal with a white dress. David wanted the party too, not out of vanity, but because he saw how Sarah's eyes sparkled when she talked about it. They saved coins in a glass jar with the word "us" written on masking tape, but the jar was always nearly empty. The crisis came like a slow tide, a client who delayed payment, another who vanished with a custom order. David started selling tools to pay bills, and with each item that left the shop, it was as if a piece of him went with it. Sarah noticed, and one night as they lay down, she whispered, "I can help, David. I'll find a way, get something. I told you already, you're not going to kill yourself cleaning other people's houses for this. This is my responsibility. Leave it to me." The answer came quickly, almost automatically. He thought he was protecting her, but in reality, he was pushing her away. The following week, Sarah started going out more frequently. Sometimes she'd return sweaty, smelling of cleaning products. David would ask, and she'd deflect. One day, he noticed the coin jar was fuller. She said it was a gift from a friend. He wanted to believe her, but he couldn't. The argument started small, a sharp comment, a sideways glance. David no longer slept well. He felt he was losing Sarah more each day. Until one Sunday, returning from the shop early, he saw her hurrying out of a street corner. She got on the motorcycle of a man he'd never seen. He didn't look like a brother, or a cousin, or a friend. The image was seared into his mind like a frozen film. It was the first time David felt something he couldn't name. It wasn't anger, nor jealousy. It was the fear of losing the only thing that still made sense. And he still thought he could fix everything. The following Monday, the sky dawned heavy, as if the day carried something no one could see. David left the house before sunrise, but not for the shop. He stopped 2 blocks away, leaning against a tree, and waited. At 6:48 a.m., Sarah came out. She carried the same small purse and wore worn sneakers. She walked quickly, without looking around. David's heart pounded so hard he almost retreated, but his body kept going. He followed his wife to the corner bus stop. At 7:01 a.m., the same motorcycle guy appeared. He greeted Sarah with an easy smile, and she smiled back. She got on without hesitation, as if she wasn't betraying anyone. David hailed a motorcycle taxi and told him to follow from a distance. Their bike entered a remote neighborhood near the industrial zone. It stopped in front of a simple house, with a cracked wall and a rusty gate. Sarah got off, adjusted her hair, and entered through the side corridor. He couldn't see anything more. He didn't know who lived there. He didn't know what she was doing there. But in his head, the answer already had a name. Betrayal. He returned home, with his soul weighing 1,000 pounds. He sat on the couch, stared at the picture frame in the living room, and remained silent for over an hour. He thought about everything they had built together. He thought about the night they slept, embracing on the floor because they had no bed. The day she sold her own phone to buy a new mold for the shop. Every small gesture that now seemed like a lie. In the afternoon, he decided to confirm his suspicion. He went to the house of Sarah's best friend, whom she claimed to visit frequently. He clapped at the gate. The friend appeared, surprised. "Sarah, she hasn't been here. I think it's been about 2 weeks since we last saw each other." David thanked her and left without another word. On the way back, he stopped at the market and bought beer. He hadn't drunk in years, but he felt he needed to quiet the voices in his head. That night, when Sarah walked through the door, he was already sitting, waiting. "Where were you?" he asked, his voice firm. "At my friend's house, I told you." He held the glass, but his hand trembled. "The same friend who today said she hasn't seen you in 2 weeks? The silence between them lasted seconds, but felt like a century. "David," she began, but he interrupted. "I saw you. Getting on that guy's bike. Going to a house I don't even know." She turned pale. "You followed me?" "I did, because you're not the same anymore. You lie. You disappear. Do you think I'm an idiot?" Sarah tried to speak, but her voice failed. He raised his tone. "Tell me the truth. Are you with someone else? Is that it? Speak!" She cowered, her eyes filled with tears. "It's not that, David. It's not that." But he wasn't listening anymore. "You destroyed everything. I gave you all of me. And you," Sarah cried, leaning against the wall. He, standing, panting, seemed like a stranger. In that moment, there was no longer a couple. There were 2 worlds colliding. One laden with pain, the other with secrets. That night, she slept on the couch, he in bed. Neither of them closed their eyes, and what remained between them was just silence. Have you ever suspected someone who only wanted to protect you? Have you ever judged someone who was trying to love you in silence? If this scene touched you in some way, comment below with a simple yes. It's how I know this story is reaching you. The next morning, the house was quiet. Sarah left early, without a word. She only left coffee in the thermos and sliced bread on the table. David woke to the sound of the door closing. The bitter taste of the night before still lingered in his throat. He looked at the empty beer glass. He felt disgusted with himself. That anger that seemed to protect only hurt. Then someone knocked at the gate. A thin man wearing a cap and a paint-stained shirt. "Good morning. Is Sarah around?" David frowned. "Why?" "Oh, I just came to pick up my change. Yesterday I accidentally left her an extra $50. It was for the cleaning she did at my place. She was supposed to give it back to me today." David froze. "What are you talking about?" "Sarah, your wife, right? She cleans my house twice a week. She cooks sometimes too. Very trustworthy person." The man spoke naturally, as if he didn't know those words were tearing someone apart inside. "Wait here," David said, and went inside, bewildered. Sarah wasn't there. But now everything made sense. The motorcycle, the strange address, the detergent, the money in the jar. He had never bothered to truly ask, only to accuse. He returned, handed over the money. "Here you go. Sorry about that." "No worries, buddy. Sarah's a good person. Send her my regards." The man left, leaving an even heavier silence. David sat down again. His eyes welled up. He remembered the first time Sarah took his arm, saying that together they would face anything. He remembered the time she shared her lunch with a stray dog, even when their own fridge was almost empty. And there, alone in the kitchen, he realized it wasn't her who was betraying him. It was he who had betrayed everything she was, with his distrust, with his pride, with his silence. He didn't know if it would work, but for the first time, he wanted to try. That same day, David didn't go to work. For the first time in years, he locked up the shop and went for a walk, aimlessly. He needed to think. Or rather, he needed to feel. He passed by Mrs. Jenkins' salon, where Sarah usually got her hair cut. He went in. "Has Sarah been here?" Mrs. Jenkins, with her glasses hanging around her neck, smiled sadly. "Yes, she has. But lately she only comes in to ask about specials. Says she wants to save every penny for a party. She said it was a surprise for her husband." That phrase hit David's chest like a sledgehammer. He thanked her and left, holding back tears. Then he stopped at the craft store where Sarah bought fabrics. The owner recognized him. "Sarah? She bought ribbon and little white flowers last month. Said she wanted to make a special gift box." David didn't know whether he felt shame or regret. Perhaps both. Sarah was sacrificing herself, and he too blind to see. He arrived home in the late afternoon. He opened her drawer, not intending to snoop, but to understand. Inside, he found a folder with payment receipts, printed messages, simple catering quotes, even an old photo of the two of them with the phrase, "It will still happen," written on it. He sat on the floor. He cried, not like a weak man, but like someone who realizes that loving also means asking for forgiveness. The next day, David tried to wait for Sarah with an apology on the tip of his tongue, but she didn't come back. Not that night, nor the next. His mind reeled. Is it too late now? What if she's tired of me? What if I've broken something that can't be fixed? He returned to the shop, but produced nothing. He looked at his tools and remembered her sitting there once, eating bread with margarine and listening to him tell bad jokes. He picked up his phone, typed a message, deleted it, called, hung up before it rang. He felt that guilt was a poison he himself chose to drink. It was on the third day of silence that the phone finally rang. It was her number. He answered with a pounding heart. "David!" Her voice was low, as if she feared her own answer. "We need to talk." The meeting was set in a secluded little park where they used to go when they first started dating. Sarah arrived first. Sitting on the chipped wooden bench, she squeezed her fingers as if rehearsing a goodbye. David arrived slowly. No flowers, no grand speech, just the weight of everything he needed to say. "Thanks for coming," he said. She looked at him with red eyes. "I almost didn't. I still don't know if I should have." He sat beside her, leaving a space between them. "I know I messed up, that I judged you without knowing. I was small-minded." She took a deep breath. "It's not just that, David. I did hide it. but because I knew you wouldn't let me, that you'd feel diminished, and I didn't want to hurt you. And you ended up hurting me even more, he replied. Not with accusation, just sadness. I just wanted to help. I saw you tired, frustrated, saying the dream of the party was far off, and I had to do something, even if it was in silence. David turned his face to her. I saw what you were doing. I saw you cleaning that house, on your knees, with swollen hands, and all just to save a few bucks for the party, and I, an idiot, thinking you were with someone else. She lowered her eyes. I'm not proud of hiding it, but I was trying to build with you, even with you pushing me away. He pulled a yellowed piece of paper from his pocket. It was the photo of them, found in the folder. I found this, and it hurt, because I realized that while I was doubting, you believed. She smiled faintly, tears in her eyes. I spoke to the owner of the house where you work. He told me you always talked about me, that you'd take lunch with my name written on the lid, that you said you wanted to give me a happy day. It's true, she replied, wiping her eyes. I just wanted you to be proud of me. David moved closer carefully. I'm ashamed I didn't see it sooner, but if you still want to, I'm willing to start over. No hiding, no pride, just us, for real. Sarah hesitated for a second, but the way he looked at her now, it was different, more humble, more whole. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and on that simple bench in a forgotten park, they made the vow they had previously ignored, to stay, even when everything seems to implode. 2 weeks later, their garage transformed into an impromptu party venue. White balloons adorned borrowed plastic chairs, and an old boombox played the couple's favorite songs. There was no professional photographer, no expensive catering, but there was something money couldn't buy: peace. Sarah wore a simple dress, bought from a thrift store, but with a smile worth jewels. David, in a mended dress shirt, held her hand as if she were all the world contained. At the toast, he gave a speech, simple, stumbling over his words, but true. It took me a long time to understand that pride isn't love, that protecting someone isn't silencing them, that loving is listening even when we're afraid of what we'll hear. Sarah cried, as did her friend, the neighbor, and even her uncle, who showed up last minute with a cooler of soda. At the end of the party, when everyone had left, David and Sarah sat alone amidst the cake crumbs and confetti. We don't need much, do we? She said. No, just the truth, and the courage to live it. And the lesson David learned is one that might resonate with you, who stayed until the end. Because sometimes the betrayal that hurts most isn't from the other person. It's the one we commit against love, when we choose to distrust instead of ask, when we choose pride instead of an embrace. In the end, love survived. Not because it was perfect, but because it was strong enough to rebuild itself. If this story moved you in any way, hit the like button now. It's free, but for me, it's worth a sincere thank you for continuing to bring stories like this. And I want to know, which city or country are you watching from? Comment below. I read everything, and I'm so happy to know where this story reached. If you believe in the power of real and profound stories, subscribe to the channel. With each new subscription, I gain more strength to continue creating scripts like these that touch, disturb, and heal. And don't leave yet. Choose one of the 2 stories on the screen now. I'll see you in the next video.